reality is there shouldn't be a lot of guesswork towards the end. Towards the end, things should get easier from a stress standpoint. You shouldn't be stressed about coming in shape those final weeks. You should already know, hey, I'm so close. It's really not a good excuse to be like, oh, well, I didn't realize until 6 weeks out, until 4 weeks out. If you're picking a show for 2023, this I want you to take very seriously. You need to ask yourself, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Cory Hageman, and today we are talking about contest prep. And more specifically, what do you need to do? Like, where do you start? Where do you first make changes? And typically most people will say, okay, it's either diet or cardio, or some people will say it's a combination of both. There is something to be said about being strategic when you are changing things in a prep. Some people swear by saving certain things till the end of prep. Other people will say that you need to start them initially up front. I mean, why wait? Now, personally, I think you need to look at it like this. You only have so many cards to play. If you use them up early on, you are left with very few resources. And yet, if you get to the end and you've blown through all your tools, you have no more magic tricks, you have nothing left. If you still have body fat left to go, well, you're kind of screwed. Now, on the other hand, if you wait and you're too conservative and you get towards the end of prep and you're like, man, like I still have a lot of body fat to go, you're still in a similar position where just because you have all these tools, I mean, like, should you throw all of them at you at once? So your goal should be to avoid both of these situations. You should be able to use those tools accordingly at the appropriate time in order to get yourself as lean as you need to be. And in theory, you should be able to get yourself that lean at least 2 weeks out. I mean, come on, like if you are aiming for that show day, what is the harm in setting that deadline 2 weeks prior to whatever the actual show day is? Listen, I do this for all my clients. I do it for myself. Giving yourself those extra 2 weeks at the end is a godsend, especially because you don't know what's going to happen during your prep. You might find that, okay, I get sick, get injured. Maybe you do have travel coming up and you're like, hey, I know I'm not gonna be able to stay on plan as tightly as I would if I wasn't traveling. Any kind of delayed week, which honestly, even in prep, you can be at home in your environment and you might still have a week where you just don't lose the way you want to. This is why I really like having those extra weeks at the end, because honestly, almost no one, hardly ever, is someone ready early. It hardly ever happens. And honestly, when it does, it's really nice, but that is the exception. That is not majority of people. Until you see that that is you, I would assume that that's not you. Obviously, with supplements, with cardio, with dieting, there is a method to escalating these things. And as a female athlete, you really should work within the toolbox that poses the least risk of virilization. Use all the tools you can, all of the non-androgenic supplements before touching the other ones. The reality is there shouldn't be a lot of guesswork towards the end. Towards the end, things should get easier from a stress standpoint. You shouldn't be stressed about coming in shape those final weeks. You should already know, hey, I'm so close. It's really not a good excuse to be like, oh, well, I didn't realize until 6 weeks out, until 4 weeks out. It always just blows my mind when that happens, whether it be the athlete or the coach. Honestly, there is no excuse for not knowing whether you're going to be in shape at that midway point. 50% of the way through prep, you should have an idea. Is the amount of time I have left during prep, is this reasonable? Can I get this done? But don't make this mistake. Before you actually pick a show, like if you're picking a show for 2023, before you pick a show, hear me out. Take this to heart. I say take it with a grain of salt a lot of the time. This I want you to take very seriously. Before you pick a show, you need to ask yourself, is it more important to do X show, this specific show, wherever it is, with this title, or is it more important that the next time you get on stage, you bring an undeniable package? The reality is you can do both, and it's not nearly as hard as people want you to think it is. If you're on track with your timeline, which if you don't have a timeline, you freaking need a timeline. Like everyone should have a timeline and you should know every single week how much you're trying to lose. That should not be a thing. Like we shouldn't be still prepping aimlessly with this aimless rate of loss per week. No, it needs to be objective, because honestly, when we're talking about bikini too, like especially this is the one time I'll lean into bikini and its lower muscularity requirements. There is zero excuse to not be able to take a girl who they don't need to be super jacked. They don't need to be taking all of these super sups. All they need to do is be in shape and look the best to their ability, which as a coach, that's like your one responsibility is like, don't bring them in fat. Don't bring them in out of shape. If they don't have enough muscle, if they don't have enough tie-in, okay, it's not your fault. To some degree, yes, I get saying, okay, well, like they need to have enough muscle, but you know how it is. There's a lot of people who just want to get on stage and they don't want to spend that time building, which honestly, you absolutely should. But hey, just going with the kind of client who's like, no, I want to do this show. I want you to prep me. I don't care if I have enough muscle or not. That kind of client, all you have to do is bring them in shape. There's no excuse to not be able to do that. And I know I am going hard on coaches right now, but what I'm trying to say is like, if the client is adherent, there is no excuse for you to not be able to put that person in a deficit for 3, 4, 5 months, however much they need. And if it's too much weight for them to lose, you have to have the balls to have that conversation with them. If that person has too much weight and it is not feasible, if it's over 25% of their total body weight that they're gonna have to strip off in order to get truly contest lean, then you need to man up or woman up and have that hard conversation, because honestly, that is out of your control. They're coming to you unprepared. They're coming to you in a state that makes it nearly impossible for them to get on stage without having to do an unnecessary amount of suffering. Keep in mind, bodybuilding is extreme. It's hard. You don't get points for suffering. Do what you need to do. Suffer the amount that you need to suffer, but don't suffer for the sake of suffering. Now, if this is you as a client, if you're short of your weekly rate of loss, if you are rushing your prep, trying to get ready way too quickly, or you burn weeks at the beginning of prep because mentally you're not dialed in, you don't have everything sorted out to facilitate a consistent prep. These are the things that make it to where you now require all of these extreme interventions that honestly, they're avoidable. These things that you have to do towards the end because you didn't set yourself up with a good plan to begin with. These things that honestly are so easily avoidable. And it's something that can be fixed easily through a good plan from the get-go. Before you start prep, you need to ask yourself, am I rushing the process in any way? If the answer is yes, maybe, sort of, you already know you are at a disadvantage compared to someone who's not rushing. And in today's day and age, having a good plan from the beginning, it's not even an advantage anymore. It's a requirement, because honestly, a lot of people are showing up really ultra competitive, even at the national level. If you're interested in exclusive content that will not be featured on YouTube, that is specific to the female physique athlete and supplemental protocols, be sure to sign up for my Patreon. The link is in the description below. As always, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.